Some games feel big, and some games quietly decide the season. The history books are not going to talk about this game, but Wolves versus Arsenal is the most important game that Arsenal have played in a very, very long time. It's very important in where Arsenal needs to go, where Arsenal needs to reach at the end of the season. And so we're going to be looking at this game, Wolves versus Arsenal, in this preview. We're going to look at some of the tactics that we might see on play, what both teams are coming into this game with. And we're going to look at some of the narratives around Arsenal and maybe look at has Mikel Arteta discovered a new system with Saka that he might want to try again. We're going to look at what we think the scoreline will be. But before we get into all of that, I do want to acknowledge everyone who's new here. But if you've been rocking with the channel, I want to say thank you. And I do appreciate you for sticking around. And if you're new, please hit that like and subscribe button as well. And share this with as many Arsenal fans as you know if you enjoy the content. Okay, because in this channel, we like to think through a lot of the games, and it's not really screaming and shouting, just trying to have a different perspective about Arsenal's fixtures, the games, the reaction, and some of the important things, that Arsenal is centered around. So do check out our other channels as well. All right, guys, let's get into it. Okay, so first thing, I was sitting there and I was thinking about this game happening on Wednesday. So I'm recording this on Monday night, and thinking about the North London derby at the weekend, and I kept asking myself, does Arteta protect certain players in this game? Because the North London derby is very important, for a lot of reasons. It's important for the emotional, psychological momentum that comes with it for any of the teams that play in that game. You've got Spurs, who've got a new manager who'll be looking to get that manager bounce, going on as well. And then you've got people like Noni Madueke who've hit a purple patch of form. You've got Eze, with all the criticism that he's had in Brentford and his bounce back game against Wigan. And then you've got Saka, who Mikel Arteta played in a central position, and wondering whether he can do that, in this game or ahead of North London derby. So there's lots of things, for us to consider into this game. And interestingly, if you think about Noni Madueke and how he tends to play and the threat that he provides. There are questions that needs to be answered, and defensively there are also questions as well. Ben White played a very good game yesterday against Wigan. Probably see Timber come back into it. Saliba was ill but came in for a couple of minutes in the Wigan game. We might see him return. You've got Saliba and Gabriel, and then it's what are you going to do in that left-hand position? Do you bring Capia back in? Do you let Miles Lewis Kelly play that role again? Probably seeing Capia, come back into it. So decisions Mikel Arteta have to make about the lineup. But let's talk about Wolves. And I don't want to just reduce this to bottom of the table, sort of team, and you kind of dismiss them. Because if you do that, you miss the trick. You miss the trap. So we look at what they actually are. We've got Sam Johnston in goal, Mosquera and Cressy at the heart of that back three, because I expect them to play with a back three. Mosquera especially, he likes to step out aggressively. I was actually at the Emirates for the reverse fixture, Arsenal against Wolves, and you could argue that was probably one of our worst, performances at the Emirates. And Wolves were very dogged. You could see what they were trying to do, keep Arsenal in front of them and just invite us and ask us to break them down. Doherty, likes to talk in and makes things very, very compact. And then you have Muller Wolf, as the wing back, with the guy that I always struggle to pronounce his name, Chow Chow. I just call him Chow Chow. It's probably not the right name to pronounce, right way to pronounce his name, so I do apologize. But Wolves are not going to be expansive, right? This is a team that is very, very desperate. They're going to look at that Brentford game and think, can we replicate? You so certainly, um, there are things that Arsenal have to contend with what Wolves are going to bring. You got Andre, that screens a lot of things, and Angel Gomez will always try to get the ball at half turn and try and cause a little bit of danger. And then Arokodare would have confidence after his performance against Arsenal at the Emirates, and they'll be hoping that they can hit the ball to him long, hit the ball to him often and frequent, and see if they can create the kind of chaos that Brentford created in the Arsenal game. So what we're going to be looking for. This is not going to be just a rollover and kind of die game for Wolves. They're going to want to put up a fight. And I think this is where it really gets interesting, for us, because you're going to have a team who's not going to care about possession. They're going to just want moments, whether it's from, set pieces, and just to create the same amount of disruption that can allow them to get a shot on target. And they're going to want to take advantage of their moments, very little, and they don't mind being patient. They don't mind being patient, switching things quickly, moving the block as well, just so that that back five is not really stretching. So this is going to be about control. It's going to be about patience for Arsenal, something that Mikel Arteta would definitely want to do. And just thinking about this, and before we move on, can we just talk about Eze a little bit? Obviously Eze had a great response in the Wigan game, and there's always all the caveats that it is also Wigan. But I think that more importantly than the quality of the opposition, it was also the fact that he had a slightly different role in this game. Because of Saka coming in and playing centrally, it meant that Eze was getting close to the ball, and in the Premier League, he's probably not going to get the time and space as he got against Wigan. That ball, that first true pass to Madueke, where he got the ball on his back foot, did a half turn, with a Wigan player on top of him, and then he was able to slide that pass in for that goal. Probably not going to get a lot of time like that, because what Premier League players do, if Eze drops, there's always going to be at least one player following him and one just covering the passing lanes. So it's a little bit more difficult. But I just think that, the criticism at Brentford was loud. But when you watch that game as well, there are certain things that Eze does well. And I could argue that he's more vertical in terms of getting the ball straight into the final third more than Odegaard. And that willingness to try those risky balls, and Mikel Arteta said that, and he tried the risky balls, which the funny thing about making risky balls is that you have to have players that are willing to run. And in those two occasions, you had a willing runner from Martinelli and a willing runner from Madueke. So almost as if, as soon as Eze saw the movement, he knew that he could make that passing. And when you play and you know that someone, can make that passing, and that's some of the frustration, for someone like Victor Gyökeres, right? Because he's looking for someone to make those quick passes to him. And often than not, he makes those runs and nothing happens. And in this game, I think that structure of having Nogard, who's not really interested in taking the ball and running with it, and all of that, just to try and control the passing and all of that, I think it really just helps with the game state as well. And I think that Eze responded in that criticism that he got. There could have been every chance for him to shrink, but I think he shows growth, and I do believe that he will come good in this Arsenal team and in this Arsenal system. And we're going to need him in this game because there's a huge possibility that Odegaard would not be ready. And I think that if Arsenal are going to unlock Wolves, Eze receiving the ball behind Andre, I think is going to be crucial. And this is where, as fans, we matter. We need to support him as much as possible. So, anyway, enough about that. Let's just zoom out, as we look at this game, and just think about, what this means in the context of the Premier League title. We've got 12 more games to go. And for those of you that have been following this channel, I did a video about the road to 90, where I believe that if Arsenal get to 90 points, they win the title. And I did this very, very early on, irrespective of what City does. I think there were like 20 something games when I did this. And we're still tracking to get to 90. However, the margins have really closed down, and we almost need to go near perfect in order to do that. But actually, it's not really about being perfect. This game, in my look at that road to 90, I put it into buckets, and this game was in the manageable bucket, where there were 9 games that Arsenal needed to get a target of 23 points. And so far, Arsenal have done, 5 of those games. They've had 3 wins and 2 draws, so 11 points. So it's really dicey now. There's no chance that Arsenal are gonna get 23 points with that target, and Arsenal have to steal points from other games. But I think that we need all 9. We need all 9 so that we can get to at least 20 points. So meaning that we're just shy by 3 points. And look, it's all about margins. We cannot afford to drop any more points. That's why I said that this game is so important for Arsenal. Because with 12 games to go, you want that cushion, that 7-point lead, the psychology that City would, until they play Crystal Palace, will know that there is nothing that they can do that can close that gap. And listen, it's quite important because City are going to be playing ahead of Arsenal in the next couple of weeks. I think the next 3 or so weeks, City play before Arsenal. So just having that 7 point cushion just means that it would always be 4 points until City play Crystal Palace. If they win all their games and Arsenal win all their games. So this is really, really important from a psychology point of view. Now, I keep coming back to 3 moments when I think about this game. I think about some of the battles that are going to be on the pitch. Madueke going 1-on-1 against Wolf. That is going to be so important. And will Mikel Arteta want to play Saka in that role again? It's very, very interesting because Norgard was almost operating like just the lone 6 in that Wigan game. We both know that Martin Zubimendi is going to come back and Rice is going to come back, beg your pardon, into the game. So it really leaves one place in that midfield for another player. Could that be Saka? Could that be Eze? Because that it's going to be Trossard on the left, it's going to be Madueke on the right, and it's going to be Gyökeres up front. So it's going to be interesting. But if Eze was playing in this game, I think him getting the ball on the half turn will be really, really important. And I think, Rice deciding whether to step forward or to sit. I think these are moments that are going to really, really define this game. And if Arsenal score first, I think this game becomes heavy for Wolves because Wolves don't, tend to do very, very well when they play at home. In fact, they're one of the lowest scorers. If you actually look at the stats, it's actually, I think, symmetrical. Arsenal have scored the same amount of goals that Wolves have actually considered this season, and they probably score about 4%, of the times that they play overall, which is really, really low. So they're really struggling for goals. So I don't really see this game as a game that Wolves are gonna be scoring goal after goal after goal, especially with Arsenal's superior defensive quality and what they're taking into this game. But what they can do is frustrate Arsenal. They can certainly do that. Certainly frustrate Arsenal and make sure that Arsenal, doesn't, get, the kind of joy that, we would expect. Expect them to sit on a 5-3-2 formation, deep block, minimal risk. I think you're gonna see that, throughout this game. Um, and listen, Gyökeres' movement might be key, right? Across that line. If he is to pin center backs, that might affect the structure of Wolves and what they are able to do. And now it's a question of, can he, bully those players into submission? So I don't think this will be a fireworks, kind of game by any stretch of the imagination. I think it needs to be a grown-up performance. It's one of those games that you want to, have it without any sort of incident. So maybe a 2-0 victory for Arsenal. Disciplined performance. But for me, these are the games that build the title races, not spectacular, not viral, just stacking those wins, especially as we're getting to the business end of the season. And then we move on and then we talk about Tottenham. So guys, if you've enjoyed, this breakdowns, alternative way of looking at Arsenal fixtures, do hit that like and subscribe button. And I will be previewing the Not London derby as well. But also win, lose or draw, we'll always do a 3 ups and 3 downs. Three things Arsenal have done well and three things Arsenal can improve going to that next game. So let's go. This is it. This is what we always wanted. We wanted to be in a title race. We wanted to be where we exactly are. 12 games to go. Can Arsenal do it? I think that Arsenal can. Hit it up in the comment section as well. I'll see you in the next one.